welcome to the blockchain female founders panel discussion. And thank you very much to the Women in Blockchain and Boston Women in FinTech organizations. And of course, thank you to our hosts here at Fidelity for this wonderful space. We put the panel together. We've got some wonderful guests with us today in celebration of Women's History Month this month. So with that, thought maybe we would start with some introductions. It's been wonderful getting to know our wonderful panelists over the course of the preparation for this discussion today. So maybe I would ask Jessica, if you could start from my left. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit of your background, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And it's an honor to have been invited to speak. I am the co-founder and COO of MintStars, which is a sex-positive content platform to protect adult creators from financial discrimination and censorship using blockchain technology. Many people probably don't know this, but 2/3 of adult creators have had a bank account or payment app shut down. And we use crypto-based payments to protect them from that and help them keep more of their earnings than they make on traditional platforms. And I'm also a PhD student in public policy at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, where my research focuses on sex workers' rights.
Fantastic. Great use case for blockchain. So Hannah, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background too?
So my name is Hannah. I'm a second-year MBA student at MIT right now, and I'm leading the MIT Blockchain Club. Outside of my school engagement, I've been a founding member of NextID, which is a decentralized identity aggregation protocol that I've been building with a team under Mask Network for the past 2 years. So we want to be able to help users self-attest their social identities across Web2 and Web3 in a decentralized manner. And by the end of last year, we were able to me and my co-founders, we built the protocol from 0 to 1. And by the end of last year, we had about 12 billion API calls for the proof service. So dApps building on top of the protocol are able to pull our data and allow users to have their own a cyber self-attested through different social credentials like Twitter or ENS, etc.
Fantastic. Another great use case for blockchain. So just in time, Nicole. Perfect timing.
Hi, everyone.
So we're just getting started with some introductions. If you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background, please.
Yeah, sure. Fantastic. Thanks for having me. My name is Nicole Davies. I have been in and around crypto since 2016 or 17, came in through the music industry. I was working at Berklee College of Music, and so worked with a lot of creative entrepreneurs and musicians and emerging artists to look at issues of rights management and payment efficiency. So since then, I've dabbled sort of across the industries. I've worked a lot with artists and much more sort of on the cultural side of crypto. Most recently, I worked with Gitcoin to launch an L2 the public goods network, which was an interesting experiment. We were one of the very first OP stack L2s, and a lot of learnings in that. And then very recently joined a team at WebSlinger, which is an agency helping DAOs and other crypto native organizations set up legal structures. So I've been blessed to work with tons of different entrepreneurs, founders, came in very early with Seed Club, and also got to help found that team and scale and grow that. And they are an accelerator based in Web3, helping on-chain crypto native projects launch.
Awesome. This is a tremendous panel with a great diversity of experience across different use cases in blockchain. We've all heard a lot about crypto Twitter and crypto bros. This is a panel in honor of women founders in this space. And so when you think of success in the crypto space and the blockchain space, how do you think about that as a female entrepreneur? What does that mean to you? And maybe I'll start. What do you think, Jessica?
For me, when I think about what success would look like for us, it's that we are used by the creator community that we aimed to solve for, and not particularly by the crypto community. It would be fantastic if the crypto community joins and uses it and spends a lot of money on our creators, because we know that crypto bros like to spend money. But our goal has always been to create a solution that was very accessible, no matter how much knowledge you had about crypto. And that I think when we started, I really didn't know very much about crypto. I knew the basics and that was it. And a lot of projects that I talked to would say, well, what we need to achieve mass consumer adoption of crypto is education. And my co-founder and I were like, no, you shouldn't have to get educated to use a product. If you have to educate someone to use your product, then you haven't made it accessible to them.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Yeah.
Hannah, how about you?
I actually recently have a very close interaction with the crypto bros or the CT users. I very recently started to contribute to a layer 2 called Scroll as a ZKVM, and then we're thinking about how to kind of overall engage like user and community. So I was contributing to some of the Dear designs for like a quest, and definitely I think in the process realized that the culture is very different from the one that I'm used to, like on social media. They're a lot more outspoken, very demanding on like features, but at the same time I think it's important to like I come from like a product and growth background to recognize and be humble about first of all, like recognizing these are some of your users and thinking about how to better serve them and provide a great user experience. At the same time, I think like I don't identify as a crypto bro or like a very outspoken CT user out there. Thinking about like I think echoing what Jessica was saying, like how do we grow the pie and also having more of these like just like general users, like we're normies coming into play and design product that is also accessible to them. Like I think being aware of what the kind of the current power user persona looks like. At the same time, I think myself included, we would love to grow the pie, and I think that's where like a lot of crypto girls or in general like female consumers love to buy stuff, but there are not that many products out there. I think that truly offers a lot of great experiences. Besides, a lot of restaking and stuff, there are other products that you can build. I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities there to have users just be users, not like crypto users in the future.
Excellent points.
I think that, events like this and, really appreciate the opportunity to get to speak with other women. It's kind of this double-edged thing where it's really important to have representation in that whole, you can't be what you don't see. And yet at the same time, it's been really nice over the last few years. I've seen a bit of a shift in a lot of the younger generation coming in. There's just a ton of amazing women. And so it's nice to be in conversations with women where we're talking about account abstraction, or we're talking about, the functions of interoperability between L2s, and we're not talking about how to onboard women. And so it's kind of this like interesting thing where it's nice to sometimes, see that like, I really want to think that it's changing and that like this next generation that's coming in, they're highly technical. They've had these role models sort of in front of them. And so there's not a question of, should I go into a technical role or do I need to sort of, align with something that's more societally normal? And so I think that it's kind of both. And I think that we're going to get more of these products because they're being built by people like us that have experiences like us. And so there's part of me that's really optimistic about that.
Fantastic. So starting an organization and starting a business is hard work, and it comes with all variety of challenges. Starting a business in technical spaces is particularly hard. Can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the more significant challenges that you've faced in building a startup, and how have you addressed some of those harder challenges? Maybe I'll start this time with Hannah.
So I think in general, like building startups has been really hard. I come from like prior to working more in like Web3, I've like 2 Web2 startup, like early operator experience. So no matter what space you're building in, interacting with people, finding product market fit is super tough. I think especially building in this space, one of the organizational challenges is kind of the full decentralization and kind of the ethos, like I think in general, like aspiration to decentralize the organization eventually, and how do you balance that with having productivity, like aligning on goals and having the right type of report line, for example. So when I was building NextID, our whole team is very decentralized, and I haven't met half of my team like really in person, like neck down. So that kind of like building the culture and almost like conviction in what we're building, and that kind of trust online, I think has been harder than what I experienced before. Because like, how do you see your colleagues as not just another Telegram agent or bot, than like a real human being? So I think I just came back from East Denver, having some of those like offsites definitely helps. And I think being like a more of a female like co-founder, entrepreneur in the space, sometimes I feel like there needs to be a bit more of a kind of telling people that I know my stuff and when I'm presenting. But yeah, that's like kind of a minor thing.
That's a big thing, I think, in you know, some respects is you come into a heavily male dominated technical space, and you know, do you feel like that is something that, you know, we carry with us as women, that people are surprised?
I definitely do. Yeah, you know, I think it's only now that I'm realizing that nobody knows. There's just like so much, and so much is changing constantly. And you know, you'll be sitting there and you have a question. You're like, well, everybody probably knows the answer to that. I'm the only person, and so I'm just going to write it down on my notebook, and then I'll Google it later. And then a dude asks it, and there's no shame. And like, he's just like, well, if I have this question, then anybody must have this question. Then this is a normal, fine question to ask. It's not embarrassing. And it's taken a lot of those experiences, and I'm not saying I never experience it anymore, but it's taken that happening so many times to realize that my dumb question is not dumb, and there's also a man in the room that probably has the same question, you know, and isn't embarrassed to ask it. And so I think that's not crypto specific, but I think in a place where technology is constantly being pushed, and like we're restaking, like what even is that?
Well, it's complicated, right? And so there's an element of confidence when you ask that question too, right? Is not to feel like, oh, this might be a dumb question, or this might be not a good question. It's a question, and you have a voice, and you're entitled to ask it. How about you? Challenges?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what Nicole said, which is that when I started in this space and I started going to crypto conferences, I really felt intimidated because I felt like I knew absolutely nothing. And within a year, I came to realize that I actually, by then, knew more than 90% of the people there, and just that most of the dudes there were way more willing to fake it until they made it, or didn't realize that they didn't know the things they didn't know. And I think women often are much more perhaps self-aware about the things that they don't know, and more humble sometimes, which I think is a good quality, but it's also one that you shouldn't allow yourself to be intimidated by.
I'm curious, how did you find out they don't know much stuff? What gives it all?
You know, I think that one of the things was in the first year that we started, and I was just trying to teach myself about things, sometimes when I would have a conversation with someone, they would start going into a lot of technical jargon at me. And at first I thought like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to learn all this. And then I came to realize that they were going into all this technical jargon to show off what they knew, but in fact it revealed that they didn't know how to explain, like they didn't really know what they were talking about if they couldn't explain it in a way that someone could understand. And then like talking to other people who really did know their stuff, who were able to explain it in a way that made sense to me, made me realize like, okay, this is what it feels like to talk to someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
There's actually a lot to be said. There's one right thing that I think you mentioned, somebody who can throw out a lot of technical, jargon and language, can repeat what they've heard. But somebody who can explain it to you actually understands what it means and how to apply it. And that is like light years of difference.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I noticed we're having matching socks. all
Oh
from,
my gosh.
DevCon. It was
It's a
so
sock
funny.
Party. Look
Yeah,
at
it's from
that.
DevCon in
And
Bogota.
boots. We've all got boots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
DevCon Bogota Power.
Yeah, but definitely, like I remember when I go to DevCon, it's like I've seen in traditional tech, we've seen like,
Yeah.
I think more equity, but
Yeah.
there and people are tall, so I like wear like
Tall
boots.
women.
Yeah, to prepare
Yeah.
myself so I don't get like covered in conversations. The mixers where you have to stand up or the
Oh.
ones that you have
Crypto's
to
a
really.
shorter industry though than the music industry.
Is it really?
It is, yeah.
It's an observation.
Take it from me.
Well, so we've started talking a little bit about differences and really diversity. We all talk a lot in larger companies and traditional companies. There's been a lot of discussion around diversity and equity and inclusion. How do you see that as a theme, or maybe not enough of attention being paid to that theme in the blockchain and Web3 space? Maybe Nicole?
One thing we had a little sort of like pre-game call last week, I think. And one of the things I sort of threw out there is wondering, and I don't think that this is crypto specific, but wondering and thinking about the fact that DEI is a little bit of a bull market phenomenon. And when in the last cycle, it was all about WAGMI, we're all going to make it. And that pretty much evaporated the minute that the bear market hit. I think that we saw that as well a bit, as things contracted and restricted. We saw some of the more overt and sort of traditional DEI initiatives also shrink. I think, the flip side, like I mentioned, is that amazing builders continued to enter, and that was a time when people really sort of forged their first cycle. And so we did see an influx of women. I saw an influx of young women builders, so I'm heartened by that. But I think the question is, how do we sort of like future proof or bear proof these initiatives so that they're not the first thing that's cut, and it's not seen as an extra, but rather as just an integral part of whatever's being built.
I totally agree. And I think fundamentally, the concept DEI should be more integrated into the core development of the technology. And blockchain in itself is like permissionless. It's like it really encourages that kind of inclusion, equity, and you can build whatever on an open protocol. That's like, I think in ethos very aligned with DEI, but I think in reality we still need just I know you're involved with like Boys Club too, and there are a lot of great initiatives to encourage more women to try out new technologies and having more empathetic, I think, leaders in the space. For example, like as a contributor to Scroll, one of co-founders, Sandy, she's amazing, like a female leader, and then I've worked with a few like female entrepreneurs that definitely inspired me to be a better one. So just seeing these like more role models and having that kind of a virtuous cycle, like kind of a growing and inspiring like more people to explore the space. You don't have to be technical. You can be a great storyteller. You can be a great designer, like getting them into the space and be core contributors to the network versus just like having some sort of a side initiative to game up the quota. I think that's the long way to go. And I think in the last cycle, we're also seeing like more female driven like products or like NFTs being something that truly resonates with some consumers. I look forward to seeing more of those initiatives that captures new users to the space in this cycle.
I think that's a number of really important points that you've made, but the one that really resonated is the fact that there's a value to having multiple perspectives from a design standpoint and from a bringing product to market. You're trying to appeal to a mass audience, which means you can't forget about an entire segment or cohort, right, of voices and needs. So I think there's a business need and not just simply you're checking a box need. But Jessica.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also goes to what is the purpose of what you're building? If you build a business with a mission that women care about, then women are going to join.
Yep.
But if you're building for something that they don't see the purpose of, then why would they go and learn blockchain to come and join you? And I think a lot of the space has been so focused on speculation and money making and, a lot of really good infrastructure projects, but oftentimes I think I've seen from going to different crypto events, people saying, oh, I have this technology, what can I build with it? Instead of saying, there's this problem that I want to solve, what tools do I have that I can use to solve it? And I think that is a shame because really what brought me to blockchain, and I guess I'm an example, is learning about the potential of blockchain for international development, transparency and international aid, and also seeing this marginalized population that I cared about was using it to solve financial exclusion.
It's fantastic. All variety of use cases and not just financial. What are you most excited about that this technology can bring? What's next and interesting and exciting?
Well, I mean, I guess I just named that.
Well, you've named a couple of things that you've been working on. Are you intrigued by anything else?
Definitely financial inclusion is the number one for me. Obviously at MinStars, we're solving for financial inclusion of sex workers, but there's also a lot of other areas that I think crypto is really transformative for, particularly people who live in countries with extremely high inflation, who now have access to stable coins where they can put their money in a currency that is actually more stable than their own country's currency. And for example, in Argentina, where they have insane inflation and people are losing their life savings, people actually trust Bitcoin more than they trust the Argentine peso. And then that also goes into the global financial flows and enabling people to send remittances much more cheaply. And that can be a huge benefit to people all over the world.
Financial inclusion, indeed.
I think for me, this idea of ownership is something that, I continue to hope that crypto and Web3 infuses into sort of the mainstream zeitgeist. I think, most recently, if you look at Reddit moderators being offered percentage of ownership, that I think came out this week. And, I like to think that these are conversations and sort of just the acceptance that you should have ownership in something that you helped create value in is, hopefully something that's evolving and is growing. And I think that, when I look at my kids and when I look at sort of what employment and what value generation is going to look like for their generation, I really hope that there's kind of an understanding that, if you're building something that you should have ownership and attribution and provenance, all of these things about that you're not going to be deplatformed. There's so many elements that I hope that this next generation is just going to sort of take for granted, that for us is really sort of this novel concept. And I think that as we know, is really fundamental in literally the technology of blockchain, but I think also the ethos. And I think that it is really my hope that there's not this sort of capture of value as crypto continues to grow. And I think that's going to be a really interesting balance of how do we make this mainstream? How do we bring consumers in? How do we make this accessible and effortless while keeping some of these fundamental values still inherent?
Absolutely, agree. I think the native more a kind of a incentive tokenization definitely offers a lot more of a kind of a borderless experience built on blockchain. I grew up in Shanghai and then kind of having to also compare thinking about tuition, a lot of international payments there. I think personally, just me and my family can understand the possibilities this can unlock. And I think especially with what Nicole was saying, and after observing what people are talking about East Denver, I think there's still so much more work to be done as an unfinished business for me, as a young builder in the space, to see how this evolves, because we're still very much more like the narrative is pretty indexed on like kind of how do we increase capital efficiency right now, and with institutional adoption, that's also like these are all great narratives, but at the same time, we're seeing like wallets. Like I've talked to a few like different wallet founders. Like we're seeing so many like new users also coming to the space, but is this cyberspace powered by blockchain a dark forest, or is it like a place where they can explore new experiences? So I think personally, I'm excited to think about kind of let's say either through decentralized social networks or kind of a connected like this like connectivity between your social graph across different platforms that's built on an open network, and product discovery, where like referral, like kind of service discovery overlapping into like a new type of product format that we haven't seen like today. I think that would be really exciting. And I think fundamentally, with the ownership like encoded in this technology, users, consumers will have a lot more autonomy and say in terms of how products are being built. And these are the asset owners that as builders in the space, we eventually need to like be very like kind of humble about, like understand their needs versus in a traditional Web2 corporate networks, the platforms are way too much of a leverage against its users. So just thinking about what are some of the new product experience and use cases that would really, I think unlock the ownership aspects, and then the kind of the self-sovereign aspects of the blockchain is something that makes me want to stay in this industry for a while.
Changing the shape of the way we communicate and the way that we share
Exactly.
content.
Exactly.
Tremendous.
Yeah, I think it puts structures around some of the things that these like next generations are already doing. My daughter's a Swiftie, and she knows the power of a crowd, the power of a swarm. You know, but I think that what I haven't been successful in crypto pilling her yet, which is disappointing. But I think that, you know, when you look at the technologies, like you said, the sovereignty, the ownership, the ability to come together in a decentralized way, you know, I think that these generations understand how to do that, and the technology is really going to enable them to do that the way that they're going to continue to want to. And so I think that the behaviors have changed, and I think that what we're building is going to sort of meet that need.
Yeah, like kind of enabling a lot, empowering more individuals to work in a different way than the corporate life that maybe we're like more familiar with. So I think, yeah, like 2 decades later, we may see a different way organizations are being structured, contributions are being valued, empowered by new technology. And maybe your daughter doesn't have to know it's on blockchain, but then she just knows, like, if I do contribute to the Swiftie crowd in a certain way, then there is like, there's like incentives. I think having a background in like sociology and government, also from Harvard. So that's like intellectually very exciting to me. Yeah.
Indeed. So as female entrepreneurs, you know, thinking a little bit about, you know, your own journeys, who are the people, you know, female or otherwise, you know, that have inspired you along the way and you know, give you that energy or support? How do you think about that support network?
Well, Nicole has been a great support for me. She was one of the first people that I spoke to in the space after meeting her at a Women in Web3 event.
Fantastic.
Helped introduce me to Seed Club, and then we got into their accelerator, which has really been helpful to us. So I think for me, it's less about having heroes or idols. I don't really like hero worship. It's more about the individuals who have like been support systems and just like believed in me, maybe more than I believed in myself.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Oh yeah, I know. I was gonna say, like just having working with really strong like female leaders in the space. Like I want to give Sandy a shout out from Scroll. Like she's been truly remarkable in both running like a very strong team and also kind of being very empathetic to like different contributors and communities, like really like a really mindful leader. I think that that's been really encouraging. And even like outside of I think Web3 people moving like the second startup I worked at were founded by 2 women, and that they're very strong product minded people. And I think having that in like kind of a like thinking about how they build products in mind and bringing that to Web3 has been also like a kind of a aspiration mission for myself. Yeah.
Excellent.
When I first started, first of all, thank you, Jessica. That was really sweet. It's always fun to, when I come to these Boston events, it's always fun knowing that I'm going to see Jessica or like, oh, I thought you were abroad, like studying or collecting data or something. And then I see you and it's always very exciting. And I've been such a champion. I'm such a believer in what MinStars is building. So that was lovely. So I've never met Laura Shen, but for me, Laura Shen was one of the people who her voice has been in my ears since 2016, 2017, when I first started getting into crypto and was like, oh God, what is this? It sounds really interesting. It seems like it could have a really big impact on music and the music industry and artists, which I love. But gosh, it's really confusing. And so I just Googled, I don't know, blockchain podcast or something like that. And Unchained is the one that came up. And thank God, because yes, Laura Shen's a woman, but what I really like about her, and I think this goes back to the thing around asking questions, is, I don't know whether the questions she asks, whether or not she knows the answer to them, but she asks such great questions, and I'll be listening. And it's again one of those things of like, oh, I don't really understand what the guest is saying, or I'm going to have to Google that. And then she asks the question that I didn't understand. And so I think that she has been in the space, like I said, I remember her talking about and reporting on the DAO hack. And that was 2016, 17, something like that. And so she's been at this for a really long time. And yet still asks such basic break it down questions. And so at some point I hope to meet her, and I'm sure I'll embarrass myself with all of the fangirling that I'm going to do. But she's a person who I really look to as sort of a guiding star, because she's been at it and really continues to educate me in her the whole sort of media package. And yeah, I mean, there's just been so many incredible women builders that continue, whether it's Water and Music, which is an amazing project founded by Sherry Hugh, Boys Club, She-Fi with Maggie Love. There's just so many amazing projects out there. Kiki, which is a really cool product being built. So it's encouraging to see so many incredible women.
That's fantastic. I mean, you think about, when you said someone who's been in crypto since 2016 has been in crypto a very long time. Like, they've been in the industry a very long time. This industry is really, very, very young still. And somebody who's been, in here in the space a decade, right, has been here a very, very long time. We also have the opportunity to take some questions. I know we've been talking for quite a bit now, and see some wonderful folks. So I think we're also open to taking some questions.
Okay, how can blockchain be used in college campuses in a day-to-day manner? Students utilize the internet first in universities before it became household accessible. So do you think if blockchain technology adoption in colleges would speed up blockchain and crypto acceptance?
I mean, I think that, there's definitely opportunities to play around. I think that there's kind of, having worked in a college at Berkeley College of Music, there's students don't actually own and control that much in academia, as it turns out. And so, and I think a lot of, what we build is about sort of controlling assets and governing and making decisions. And so I think that there's definitely some opportunities to experiment there a little bit. I think, with, I wasn't at East Denver, but I heard that the IYK, app, which is like an NFC, I could imagine that there's a lot of fun experiments that an on-chain sort of focused university could do there, where, different access and different onboarding was available. So I think that there's starting to be, Privy. I literally just on Workcast today, Privy enabled a Spotify login to some music apps. Privy is a sort of wallet account abstraction infrastructure, which is really excellent. So I think that there's starting to be some applications out there that are going to make it easier for students to basically propose, we could do this or we could do that. A student group could do something where they're managing assets or they're token gating an event. These are things that were possible a few years ago, but they've definitely gotten easier now. And then, of course, I think that the other sort of like extreme is, on-chain credentials and stuff like that. I think University of Nicosia maybe was one of the first that sort of experimented with that. I think that we're probably a long way before something like that happens.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like more on the kind of a day-to-day application side, what would be interesting is, yeah, like kind of, I'm still pretty bullish on like new ways of like social, and then for example, like if you're using like a building on top of like Farcaster or using some of the like frames, you don't have if the product looks a bit different. Like my friend and I were actually been jamming about this idea of like geofencing, kind of your community, like geofencing, and then discover people with similar interests. That's something like, he's an introvert. He doesn't like, it's not like Web3 related at all, but I was just thinking like, it'll be fun to like build on Farcaster, or like it doesn't, like for a lot of the users, for college students, if it's something new and fun, it doesn't have to be like a crypto native to use it. So I think that could be one like way for the adoption. You just like organically build new and superior products. I also spoke with, there's a college DAO organization that are essentially using on-chain kind of credentials and voting and kind of incentive mechanism to enable more of these like student clubs, like blockchain clubs, to better get more fair distribution of, let's say, the work they do. So I run the MIT Blockchain Club. It's like all volunteer basis. I do it out of my pure heart, and it was like hours and hours of work. And overall, like I think contributors to the space should have more of like these like kind of enablement than before using blockchain. And I think more on a DGen side, Berachain has been running, I think, some more fun on campus activation. That's a different area, I think, but that's more targeted towards the students who are already sort of interested in the space. And there are also, I think, more community focused existing projects that are targeting those students. Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's one of the things that's fun, is that stuff has become so easy to build and connect that even a non-technical person such as myself can put together these on-chain connections and experiments. And I think that's the other side of things, is that the sort of barrier to entry has become much lower. And so, you can look at, so Frames on Farcaster is basically like a little sort of mini app. There's 2 buttons, and you're in something that looks like a Twitter feed, but Farcaster is being built from the ground up, and so the features are more limited and sort of come online actually quite quickly. But if you're used to Twitter, which is this like really fully baked app, it seems like, oh, it's missing video or it's missing polls or something like that. And so they basically, a frame, it's just that, it's an empty frame, and you can build an app within that then shows up in the social feed. And there's 2 buttons. And so one of the first things that people did was selling Girl Scout cookies on chain. And so they literally they embedded the Girl Scout cookie app into a frame on Farcaster, and they were selling Girl Scout cookies. There's somebody else who's doing sort of wagering of, is this person or is this person going to post more within this time period? And so you can bet. And what's really cool about it is that it's all within that frame. And so you don't leave the app, it stays within that. But these things that, I'm explaining things that seem like they would take vast amounts of technical knowledge to be able to do. And it's gotten to the point where you can really experiment in a fun way and then sort of link these on-chain experiences so that, like, you do this, then it drops a token, and then using that token, you can now access something else. So like play around, like that's, if you're in college, like what a better time to, to experiment and to have fun. So yeah, it seems like a great opportunity.
So both official and unofficial use
Yeah.
cases in the learning environment.
When you're evaluating those use cases, like how do you judge if this use case deserves it? Like if this benefit brought by this use case can outweigh the additional resources required?
I think that's a great question of, do we have to decentralize everything? Just because you have the technology doesn't mean you
Yes.
have to use it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good question that people probably don't ask enough. And I think it kind of was getting at something you were saying of, it's not, oh, I have this technology and so let's apply it to everything, but rather I have this question or this problem. And so where is decentralization actually important? And I think that goes with a lot of the things that we're building of, do you really need anonymity in this, or do you really need every single thing to go up for a snapshot governance vote, or can a certain group of people be empowered? And I think different things are important to different groups and different types of people. But I think it's a really good question. I don't know that there's a hard, fast rule that I can think of, but I think it's important to kind of push back, because you're right, not everything. I mean, there was a time, like, I don't know, 2017 or so, lettuce was going to be on the blockchain, and tulips, and like there was, all of the sort of like shipping tracking, like that was really big then, of like we're gonna track every single bit of produce, and we're gonna verify this piece of lettuce and where it was built, and et cetera, et cetera. And it turns out like that's probably not something that needs to go on a blockchain.
Or the blockchain really doesn't solve the problem. If you have a fish and it's tagged, it has an identifier, but then you still can't solve for whether the fish is like one salmon or tuna. I guess like that kind of that's the gap.
Yeah.
But I find that those very amusing for sure.
But I think the point here,
Yeah.
and it is an excellent question, is what is the particular issue, or what's the inefficiency that you're looking to solve for, or the corollary to that. I also tend to ask when we talk about tokenizing or digitizing anything is the current analog working in a way that works, and I think about human interaction as an important analog. We don't want to completely tokenize or decentralize the entire world. There still are things that make sense in the current analog world.
Yeah, we've had to deal with a lot of trade-offs with MinStars because we're building for a non-crypto native community. There are a lot of things about the concept of Web3 and decentralization that I love, but some of which I've had to give up to actually meet the needs of our creators in terms of accessibility. So not requiring users to have to learn how to download a MetaMask and create a wallet to be able to access the application. Even though, if everyone had their own MetaMask wallet, it would be like this amazing decentralized utopia where you all have full control of your funds. We've had to be a little more centralized in order to be accessible and achieve actual consumer adoption. Another example is, so one of the unique aspects of MintStars is we enable creators to make their content collectible and resellable and earn royalties when their fans resell the content, because we saw that a lot of creators were suffering from people pirating their content, sharing it on other sites without their consent. So we thought, well, what if we create a legitimate way for fans to share content where the creator actually makes money from it? And so when we initially did that, it was going to be an NFT. And we were like, this is amazing. NFTs enable you to get royalties. They enable you to track where your content is going. But one of the first obstacles we faced with that was at scale, when creators want to post large volumes of content, right? Like, let's say they get to 1,000 fans and then there's an NFT for every single fan. Well, then you start to encounter problems with gas fees. So we said, okay, we're going to use a technique called lazy minting, where you don't actually mint it to the blockchain until someone tries to export it off the platform. As long as it's within the platform, it doesn't actually get put on the blockchain. Then we saw, well, all of these NFT platforms no longer respecting royalties, which goes against the very reason we used NFTs in the first place. And nobody was really using the export feature on the platform anyway. So we just got rid of it. So actually, we're not actually using NFTs anymore. We're just using the concept of NFTs.
But again, right, adjusting for the community that you're trying to solve the issue for.
So speaking about like financial deplatforming, I was wondering, does your company consider like financial privacy at all for payments? Or I was just wondering what your company's like stance on that is or how they go about it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And privacy is a big concern with blockchain, right? Because blockchain payments are traceable. One of the ways in which we maintain user privacy is that the payments go through like a third-party payment processor that isn't attached to our name. And so when customers, so the way that we use crypto payments on the platform is fans can purchase a credit for USDC with a credit or debit card. They are then credited for that. And when they make a purchase on the platform, the creators get paid out in USDC, which they can cash out to their bank account or to an external crypto wallet. One of the big concerns of fans in this space is they don't want this showing up on their bank account. Same for the creators, because some banks are notorious for shutting down creators' accounts if they have the name of an adult platform coming in on their bank statements. And so the way that payments work on MintStars is MintStars will not show up on your bank statement. It shows up like a purchase of cryptocurrency or a deposit of cryptocurrency. That said, there are still concerns, I think, with the traceability of blockchain payments. And I would love to see more options for privacy. But some of the private crypto coins like Monero, Tornado Cash have been really heavily persecuted by the authorities. So I think the challenge is whenever you have privacy, you have a trade-off with also with enabling both behavior that shouldn't be criminalized but is still persecuted and behavior that should be criminalized.
I have a couple questions online, but also a comment that your hat is amazing.
It's Boys Club. Thank you.
So what type of cultural movement or event do you think would bring more women into digital assets? For example, Taylor Swift NFTs or tickets on chain?
I mean, another phenomenon, in case you haven't heard, is that the tweens are really into skincare. And so I mentioned Kiki, which is a really cool project that's being built. I think they started out with a couple of nail colors and some eyeshadow and different like eye tints. They're coming out with a skincare line as well. And what's cool about this is that it's being community sourced. And so kind of similar for those that remember when Glossier was really new. And the community was really involved in building the product and feeling like you were a part of it. I think that Kiki is sort of building off of that. But there's ways to kind of vote and show that you were a part of that. And I think that, you know, who knows whether they're going to drop points or whether there's going to be tokens or what exactly it's going to be, you know, as far as sort of the ownership or the value accrual. But I think that the being able to just show that you were a part of this and have on-chain proof and sort of irrevocable proof that you were part of building this is really cool. And so I think that there's some whispers out there. There's certainly not enough examples. I think the fact that like I sort of go back to pointing to a few out there. But I think that that's one. And then the obvious, although we haven't really talked about it, I think is gaming. You know, I think that gaming is going to continue to be just a massive onboarding industry. And, you know, hopefully with the sort of proliferation and the increase of builders, we're going to see different kinds of games that appeal to different kinds of people. And so I think that that's going to continue to be a big one as we sort of move into maybe not this cycle as much, but sort of coming cycles.
I think more, it's either like women driven or like kind of more contextual memes could be one. I mean, like
I love
memes have
that.
been
Yeah.
memes are being used in like by a lot of the crypto bros who says that we can't take it over, right? And like a few, I think like I'm a holder of like Crypto Coven. I think a lot of the last cycle we see some of these like emerging cultural like statements. And then I think there's some studies that shows like female like NFT holders, for example, are like more sort of like buy them as a consumption versus like a more of a speculative asset. So like when I buy something and I like really buy into the ideology or like philosophy or like it's cool, something that's like a bit meme-ish or like kind of a cultural like a iconic movement. I think those would drive more of those like people with consumer mindset, maybe likely more women like to the space. I have a friend of mine recently talked about she like launched this thing called Bitcoin like a long time ago, and then maybe there could be like a season 2 or something like that. Like overall, just like using blockchain as like a technology, but really encourages like kind of self-expression and personification of who I am and what I believe in online. I think that would get more new users to the space.
Yeah, I mean, I do, especially as prices have gone down and gas has sort of become negligible with various L2s. I really do enjoy just collecting silly, memes or things just to be like, I was here, or, I'm a part of this group. It's fun the same way that I, used to put stickers on my notebook or patches on my backpack. It's that same kind of thing of like, I was a part of this or I am a part of this. And it's fun to be able to signal that.
Okay, well, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your comments and for your wisdom and for your inspirations. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.